What's up, everybody? Tim Anderson here, aka Renfield, the bearded dwarven princess, and we are back with another Rings of Power rant. Today we're diving into Amazon ghosting Peter Jackson, despite previously wanting him to take a look at their scripts and then deciding at the last minute, actually, we don't want that to happen because that might put us in a bunch of hot water. So maybe we don't want to do that. Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. We're gonna dive in, so hopefully you guys are ready. This one came to me courtesy of IGN. Popped up in my feed the other day. Amazon's Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power reportedly wanted Peter Jackson, but then ghosted him. So it starts out, Peter Jackson is famously not involved in Amazon's Lord of the Rings of Power series, which is deliberately trying to keep itself separate from Jackson's famous trilogy, which I find to be incredibly odd considering the fact that Weta has come on and done effects for the show. They've done the orcs as an example, which look very well done. And by the way, those are the couple of the times that I've been able to praise something that I've seen from the trailers. It has been the VFX and the orcs, which I think look very, very good. It's the storyline that bothers me to date. In any case, Peter Jackson's companies are involved to some degree, and the fact that they filmed the first season in New Zealand, where Peter Jackson pretty much has a monopoly on all things related to Hobbit and Middle Earth, and New Zealand has become known as the Middle Earth uh, sort of around the world. It seemed odd to me that they weren't going to be more involved with him. It says here there was evidently a point when the studio was at least willing to entertain the possibility, even goes so far as to reach out to Jackson directly. When the director asked for scripts, however, Amazon abruptly went silent. And this is a quote from the Hollywood Reporter. It says, they asked me if I wanted to be involved, me and producer writer Fran Walsh, and I said that's an impossible question to answer without seeing a script. So they then said, as soon as we get the first couple of scripts, we'll send them to you, and then the scripts never showed up. That's the last thing I heard, which is fine. No complaints at all. So I totally understand Peter Jackson's take on this as well. You're never going to know sight unseen if something is going to be a project that you want to get involved in. Like, I need to see scripts. Like, just because you're doing a Rings of Power show doesn't mean that I automatically want to be involved just because I built, the Middle Earth that is known as New Zealand these days. Um, I mean, you got to think about this for a minute. Like the the New Zealand Airlines. I mean, he's been knighted. He's done a huge service for the tourism industry of New Zealand. Uh, Took their film industry and made it into a Hollywood. I mean, Weta has gone on to do so many effects for so many amazing films. They're like the ILM of this generation in terms of what they've worked on and how they grew from this tiny little, effects driven company doing practical effects and building into this massive empire that does digital and modeling and all this other stuff around the world. And then, that led to James Cameron coming in and buying up all the property and then building his own studios on site so that he could make Avatar 2, 3, and 4 and all this other stuff. Like what Peter Jackson did for New Zealand and what he did for bringing Middle Earth and Tolkien to the world is not something to be taken lightly. And to have him involved in the project would have been a this amazing blessing. And the fact that they just ghosted him seems weird to me. Um, yeah, I don't know. And then did you talk here? Jack Step started the fantasy genre 20 years ago. Blah 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 blah. We already know all of this. It'd be a big reason why Amazon is betting big on the new series, spending hundreds of million dollars on the rights of the production because of the fact that they know it's going to be a cash cow because it was a cash cow for Peter Jackson. Um, so I mean, it's true. Now Amazon responded in a statement, and we're gonna get into that here. But before we do, this is the part where I got to do my call to action, ladies and gentlemen, because it's how I make a living. If you haven't already done so, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you get more updates like this as we continue to do the Rings of Power and also the other things we do, like the Mondays of Middle Earth show, where we're reading through The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and The Silmarillion to go along with our watch through of the Rings of Power so we can continue to poke holes in all of the things they're doing. Those come out every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Central Time here on the YouTube channel, so check those out. Don't forget, of course, that if you want to support the channel, you can do so directly with a super thanks, picking them out, $5, $2, whatever. Buy me a Ferrari. It's all cool. There's also you can join as a member of the Adventurers Guild. That's our membership option here on YouTube. And of course, you can also tune into a live stream every morning or every evening do super thanks and super chat. So go over to patreon.com/windinghermits to learn more about that fantasy world behind me, because I am a game developer and a writer doing stuff with my brother, my wife, and some of our friends over there. So check all that stuff out. Let's get back to what they're talking about here with Amazon responding to a statement to the Hollywood Reporter saying, in pursuing our rights for the show, we were obligated. Hold on a minute. Obligated. We were obligated to keep the series distinct and separate from the films. We have the utmost respect for Peter Jackson, the Lord of the Rings films, and are thrilled that he is looking forward to watching the Rings of Power. Um, this is a key phrasing here. We were obligated to keep the series distinct and separate from the films. The rights that they purchase are not film rights. The rights that they purchased are TV rights. So that means that they have to keep that part separate. And they can't touch anything that Peter Jackson did with his films, because the Lord of the Rings story is encompassed by those films. So what they mean by that is they can't touch any of the storyline of the Lord of the Rings, because that's been told in Peter Jackson's films, and they can't touch that, nor can they touch The Hobbit, because that's been covered in films. They can work on the stuff in between, which is the second age stuff that they've chosen to pull and poke at and make up, or uses the framework of what they're inventing here. Um, What's really interesting here is, though, that they say that, but then they're definitely pulling from, like, if you haven't seen the Balrog at the end of the trailer they did recently, that's Peter Jackson's Balrog. Like, that is the same exact style of Balrog and everything. It's the exact same creature we saw in Peter Jackson's films. So this idea that they're obligated to keep things distinct and separate is not necessarily true. Storyline is what they're referring to here more than anything else. Um, it says former head of genre programming Sharon Tal Ugadado was also reportedly interested in getting Jackson involved in the show. However, the hurdles would have been significant, and this is the key part here. The Tolkien estate at the time, remember this was at the time, the Tolkien estate was among the stakeholders reportedly opposed to Peter Jackson having a role in the show, owing to Christopher Tolkien's criticism of the original movies. So I don't know where that stands today, but you have to think about at the time. I think Christopher Tolkien was probably still involved when the rights were being discussed. I could be wrong on that. Can anybody confirm that in the comments below? Because I really don't remember the timeline. I'd love to know. Was Christopher Tolkien still alive in there? Um, Alive at that time or not? I'm not quite sure. It says Amazon originally spent 250 million in a bidding war to acquire the rights to the Lord of the Rings, giving the streaming giant. Yeah, we already know all that. Blah 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 blah. But they don't have access to similar unfinished tales of the history of the Middle Earth. Yet they keep trying to use those things as source material, because they're like, but they said this, and that means we can use it over here even if we don't directly reference it. Blah 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 blah. Ugh. Jackson says he bears no ill will to the show. Says I'll be watching it. I'm not the sort of guy who wishes ill will. Filmmaking is hard enough. If someone makes a good film or TV show, it's something to celebrate. The one thing I am looking forward to is actually seeing it as a perfectly neutral viewer. Well, good on you, Peter Jackson, because you are able to maintain a distanced point of view that many people can't. Um, Obviously, I've always talked about how here on my show, my rants are more discussion points and tongue in cheek poking fun at things more than anything else, because I am, of course, going to watch the show, and I have been very public about the fact that if it has redeeming qualities, I'm not afraid to talk about those redeeming qualities and praise them, as I've praised the VFX and the costume department in, not the costume department, some of the costumes look good, some of them don't. But I have been able to praise the VFX department and the makeup and special effects department, because they've done some really cool stuff. Um, I've seen visually some very neat stuff. Costumes hit and miss, ladies and gentlemen. I've seen some that look okay and some that look really bad. In any case, these Rings of Power rant videos are here to poke fun at and make fun of, and as we get into the show, healthily debate whether or not the show is pulling off an actual adaptation, or if it's going to be a train wreck of woke agendas, as it has shown itself to be so far, despite the showrunners claiming, we're not creating a modern day political show, we're not injecting modern day politics. Thoughts, comments below. See you next time, folks.